Yes, I salute you all. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. So basically, today we are under constitutional history, and the topic of emphasis or the specific topic that we are going to look at, we are going to look at how the 1900 Uganda Agreement led to the constitutional development, how the 1902 and 1920 Order in Council led to the constitutional development in Uganda. Actually, I'm going to relate whereby the historical events, how they how can I say that those constitutional events, how they systematically led to constitutional development in Uganda. Realize that I'm starting with the 1900. Realize that the 1900 led to a constitutional event, and that constitutional event also led to a constitutional event. Similarly, when you realize that, or when you encounter a question of such character, whereby it calls that discuss how the 1900 led to the constitution development, you can relate it very well. Or discuss how the order in council led to the constitutional development, you can relate it very well, basically. So to start with the gist, I'll start with the 1900 Buganda Agreement. We all know the preamble of the 1900 Buganda Agreement, which was signed by Her Majesty's representative and the regents, because Daudi Chwa was still young. But for you to understand the contents of the 1900 Buganda Agreement, I have a video that is already there that talks about the contents of the what? Of the Uganda Agreement. So I'll start to relate how the 1900 led to the constitutional development systematically with other what? With other events. I'll start with Article 1 of the 1900 Uganda Agreement that talks about the demarcation of boundaries, whereby boundaries were demarked. You get, and in this essence, we can relate it, or we can make it that it led to the constitutional development of the 1902 Order in Council, Section 1. You get, because it also talks about the boundaries that were what? Were marked. You get. So basically here, when a question comes to you that discuss the constitutional development made by the 1900 Uganda Agreement, it is not basically calling you to relate it to the current constitution. You understand? But it calls you to relate to any event that was engineered by that what? The 1900 Buganda Agreement. You talk about any constitutional event that was engineered by the 1900 Buganda Agreement. That's why I say that Article 1 that talks of the Buganda Agreement that talks about demarcation, it brought the 19, it is actually it relates to the section 1 of the 1902 order in what? In council. And also similarly, it also relates to the what? To the 1962 Independence Constitution in that way. You get. So similarly, in our current constitution, we see that the demarcation of boundaries is witnessed first of all Article 170, 179 that talks about the boundaries of the local government what? Units. You get. Similarly, also when you read the second schedule of the 1995 Constitution also talks about the what? The boundaries, how different districts are being what? Demarcated. You get. So basically, note that in mind. So that's how Article 1 of the 1900 Uganda Agreement impacted on the constitutional development, basically. And also when you go to Article 2 of the 1900 Uganda Agreement that talks about the collection of tribute, understand? The collection of tribute similarly, or what you have to put in mind, or what you have to bear in mind is that the collection of tribute impacted in various ways, whereby when you go to the 1902 Order in Council, the onus was on the commissioner, understand, to collect tribute within the region. You get. Similarly, realize that all currently in our constitution, basically, or in the current constitution of 1995, realize that the collection of tribute is portrayed under Article 152, which shows that the parliament is the one to amend or to put those laws that guide the collection of what? Taxes or tribute throughout the what? Throughout the citizens. And also when you read Article 192, talks about the collection of taxes by the local government what? by the local government. You get? So we are relating. Similarly, the existence of that Article 12 of the 19 of Uganda Agreement is the one that impacted the constitutional development that I've related to. You know, that's where I saying comes that history repeats itself. You get? Any event that happens currently, it must have a root behind or in the past. However much when it happens currently, it becomes a bit modernized or a bit what? A bit technological compared to the previous. But just know it happened in the what? The previous. Then basically when you go to Article 3 of the 1900 Buganda Agreement talks about equality. You get? Article 3 talks about equality. What do these mean basically? And realize that some of this article that talks about equality, though it was on equality that the Kingdom of Uganda be equal with other districts around, realize that here it brings this concept whereby when you realize that the conferences that we read, or the conferences that we read, basically I first relate to the reports that we have presided by the Earl of Munster and J.B. what? Wild. Those reports had the recommendation that Uganda not to be equal. You understand where I realized that the Marlborough what? Conference, or and relating it to Earl of Munster what? Report, whereby they said that they cannot allow Uganda to secede. You get? They bring that concept, a concept that they wanted to make Buganda equal to the rest of Uganda. You get? And similarly, to the 1995 Constitution talks about equality under Article 21, that equality, everyone is equal before the law. Everyone is equal. Talks about equality. So put that in mind basically. Then when you go to we go to Article 4 of the 19 of Uganda Agreement, Article 4 that talks about, or Article 4 that talks about revenue. Here you realize that Article 4 talking about revenue talks actually a collection of revenue, and similarly it is the revenue has to be collected by the what? By the was supposed to be collected by the head of the protectorate, who was the commissioner. Similarly, still under the 1902 order in council, revenue was collected. You get? The revenue was collected by the what? By the commissioner. He had that mandate. You get? That is, so it impacted the formulation of that clause under the 1902 order in council. You get? Similarly, up to date in the collection of revenue can also be can also be witnessed whereby it is like the Wataka grievances that happened. I can relate to the Mvuju and the Busuru what? Laws that were implemented to make sure that the squatters on the land have the laws that have a specific amount that they pay to the what? To the landlords. You get? So it is also, it impacted that event of the Bataka grievances. Similarly, in our constitution, the collection of, we see it in Article 152, where Parliament is the one to make laws that guide the collection of such taxes and revenue, and also Article 192 that talks about the collection of taxes by the local government. You get? That is specifically Article 4 of the 19 of Uganda Agreement. Then we shall go to Article 5 of the 19 of Uganda Agreement. Article 5 talks about the application of the protectorate laws. You get? Application of the protectorate laws in the what? In the kingdom. Similarly, here what you have to bear in mind is that the 1902 and 1920 orders in council, those were protectorate laws. So that article impacted those events, those subsequent events that happened. And also realize that still under the independence constitution, it was, the biggest part was adopted from the what? From the protectorate government. You get? And to relate it to the constitution doesn't vividly bring out the protectorate laws. But however, me, I'll run to the Judicature Act. Judicature Act section 14 talks about the application of common law and the principles of equity, or the doctrines of equity. Basically, that implies, or that puts us in mind that that's the protectorate laws. Even up to date is what? It is applicable. Basically, that's the picture that we get. So that article impacted those subsequent what? Constitutional developments. You get. Then when you go to Article 6 of the 19 of Buganda Agreement, talks about the recognition of the what? Of the Kabaka, basically. The recognition of the Kabaka was supposed to be recognized in the of Buganda Agreement once he obeys by the protectorate rules. But however, the recognition of Kabaka, we see it is witnessed, understand, in the 1953 Kabaka crisis, basically. So that article impacted or led to the subsequent event of the 1953 Kabaka crisis, basically. So that was one of the constitutional development of that article, because it was withdrew. Sandro Cohen withdrew it, but after it was put back. You understand? The recognition of Kabaka, it was also put to status with Her Majesty. You understand? His capacity. Then when you relate it to the current constitution, or when you relate it to the current constitution, realize that article that talks about the recognition of for the cultural leaders and institutions, that is Article 284. Get. It talks about that they have to be recognized, or they have to be recognized by the what? By the cultural leaders and basically, which is 246. Basically, 246 talks about the recognition of the cultural leaders and what? And institutions. Similarly, in our constitutions, that is Article 6, how it impacted the constitutional what? Development. Then when you go to Article 7, that Article 7 talks about the Namasore's payment. Here I won't waste more time, but I'll relate it still on Article 246 of the 1995 Constitution, whereby the cultural leaders and institutions are what? Are recognized. You get. When you go to Article 8, or Article 8 talks about cases of mixed nature cases, that all cases of mixed nature cases must be taken to courts of the protectorate. Basically, here I will relate, or I'll put in mind, whereby it impacted the formulation of the what? Of the High Court, or Her Majesty's Court, under the 1902 Order in Council. Even 1920 Order in Council, there was the Judiciary that was formulated by the Commissioner. You get. So it impacted those events, subsequent events. You get. Currently, this can be witnessed, or this can be portrayed. And when you read Article 126 of the Constitution, which talks about the judiciary, its independence and its composition and its formulation, basically. You start from Article 126. Then when you go to Article 9, Article 9 talks about the administrative units, which we are supposed to be 22. You understand? Administrative units. These administrative units were also portrayed under Section 1 to Section 2 of the 1902 Order in Council. They were portrayed, those administrative units. You get. So these administrative units that were portrayed, they are supposed to be governed by the protectorate. Similarly, we see it in Article 177 of the 1995 Constitution, that talks about the districts, basically, around the Ugandans what? Districts, 177 of the Constitution. So the implementation of that article impacted, you understand, what we see in our current what? Constitution. You get. That's why I'll continue to repeat the saying that history repeats itself, but however, it comes in a new form or a new format, but it is the same. You get. Due to the civilization that we are going through. Then when you go to Article 9, that talks about or Article 10, that talks about the ministers. You get. Whereby it talks about the appointment of ministers by the people of the what? By the Kabaka, his ministers on the Ruchiko, on the body. Realize that here, since the Kabaka was given powers to appoint the ministers, and those are the people that were recognized as people that were appointed. Similarly, we can relate it, or we can borrow that what is happening to date. The leaf, actually they borrowed the leaf from those contents that happened those previous times. You start from Article 1 triple one, basically, which talks about the ministers that are being appointed by the what? By the president. So when you read even those subsequent articles from 112, 111, 112, all provides for the what? For the ministers. You get? So the formulation of the ministers that are being appointed today, it is proven or it is believed that it originated, you understand? It originated from the what? From what happened during the signing of the agreement or the terms of the what? Of the agreement. Then when you go to the Luchiko, which is Article 11, the formulation of the Luchiko to become as a native court. You get? The Luchiko to become as a native court, basically here, even right now we still have the Luchiko. And basically here what I can relate is that the Luchiko acted as the parliament by that time. Similarly also acted as a caricho what? A caricho body. I can relate it to similarly to relate it, or before relating it to the current constitution, the Luchiko first of all impacted what they call the 1966 Kabaka crisis, whereby it is this Luchiko that sat down and said that we shall not consider the 1966 pigeonhole constitution. So basically, it contributed an impact. Its formulation, actually, when it was formulated, it existed. So it contributed an impact to the occurrence of the 1966 Kabaka crisis, whereby they refused to obey Obote, you understand, and his constitution, which was the pigeonhole. And similarly, we witness that the Luchiko, still this Luchiko, helps in the what? Acts as a parliament. Similarly, today, parliament is portrayed under Article 70, 78, 79, yeah, and 70 and 80 basically. Talks about parliament to be a house to make laws basically. You get? And also are related to Article 246 basically. 246. Article 246 also talks about the recognition of the Caricho institutions, basically, because the Luchiko is a Caricho institutions, basically, what you have to know about. Then when you go to Article 12, which talks about taxation, uh, the collection of taxes that was made by the protectorate can be overseen, can be seen, or can be witnessed. Still the same Article 152 and Article 192 that talks collection of taxes by the local what? Government. So the implementation of the taxation under the OO impacted that constitutional what? Development, basically. And also when you relate to section 13, Article 13 of the 19 of Buganda Agreement, which talks about the military service, the kingdom, basically. The Buganda people were supposed to serve in the what? In the army, or were supposed to serve in the army. Similarly, or up to date, realize that this article impacted in the what? What they call there is the, when you start from the JB, while the committee that was written, the Lancaster, and the Marlborough, whereby these people during those conferences, they sat down with the people that were preparing them for independence, and the recommendation that we are put in reports, realized that these people, or the Kabaka, or the kingdom itself, wanted to contain, or wanted to have full control of its own what? Army, basically. So basically, what you have to know about basically it happened after the JB. If you read at the JB World Committee of 1959, the Buganda people made the 1960 memorandum, you understand, whereby they made the requisition to Her Majesty that they want to be control of their what? Their army. You get? So basically, this is the point that it engineered the existence of the what? Of those reports and the conferences that happened. You get? Similarly, in our constitution, we see that under Article 208, which talks about the 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 starting the UPDF, the existence of the UPDF, the Uganda People's Force, to protect the country. You get, so its formulation it is believed that it happened in the past, but it is coming in another format, but it is the same. You get, that is talks about military service. That is Article 13 of the 19 Buganda Agreement. When you go to Article 14, that talks about the road maintenance. Road maintenance, basically, it was a clause in the Buganda Agreement. And basically here, what you have to bear in mind are related to the current constitution that talks about the current constitution. When you read Article 189, that talks about the local government, the government and the local governments, about their functions. There's a function that talks about for them to make those services, those social services, to extend services. For example, road maintenance, among others. You get, read Article 189, basically. Then when you also relate to, we go to Article 15. Article 15 talks about the distribution of land. Remember, land was divided into mile and crown. This article impacted a lot of systematic constitutional developments. First of all, it led to the 1902 Order in Council, whereby the crown land was declared to be public land by the commissioner. Secondly, it led to the Bataka grievances, Bataka and peasant grievances, whereby these Bataka were dissatisfied about what was implemented during the serving of land in square miles. You get. Thirdly, it also led to the what? It led to the constitutional development, that the constitution that we are having up to date. When you read Article 237, talks about the forms of land tenure systems that we're having in Uganda. Not basically, we didn't just wake up and formulate it, but it was existing. You understand? It was existing before. You get? It was existing before. Basically, not that in what? In mind. And also what you have to bear in mind, or what you have to put in mind, that still under the Land Act, you get the Land Act, and also the Land Act and the Registration of Titles Act, they are all implemented, or they are all put in what? In existence. Not just because we just woke up and realized, but just because they were already what? They were already in the past. And also this article, it is also believed that it led to the what? It led basically about the Idi Amin. It led to the Idi Amin's military regime that was tyrannical, because Idi Amin chased all these land laws, and he said that all land was government land. You understand? If this system wasn't there, that couldn't what? Happen. You get. So basically, not that in mind, basically. Then when you go to section 16, which talks about the forest regulations, still I use say Article 189 that talks about the functions of the local government. You get, the local government, basically. It is also a good section about, those are some of the duties of the what? The duties of the what? Of the local government, basically about forest reservations. Basically, I will go to, there's section 18 to 20, basically 19 to 20. When you read Article 19 to 20 of the 19 of Buganda Agreement, talks about that this agreement can be revoked at any moment once the people don't abide by what? Don't abide by it. You get, not just because, or they are not saying that just because they wanted to make it as a supreme law. You get, are related to what this article led to the 1953 Kabaka crisis. You understand? 1953 Kabaka crisis, where Kabaka had failed, you understand, to obey to the policies of the commissioner. You understand? And when he failed to obey by the policies of the commissioner, he had to revoke Article 6 of the agreement, and the Kabaka was no longer recognized as a native ruler, hence the crisis. That's why I say that this article impacted, you understand, the 1953 Kabaka crisis. Through this article, realize that it brings that sense of understanding under our current constitution, which under Article 2, which says that the constitution is the supreme law of the state. Any law that is inconsistent with the provisions of the constitution is null and what? And void. Understand? It gives you a sense that any law that is inconsistent can be revoked at any moment. For example, the Witchcraft Act were revoked. You get, among others. That is from 19 to 20. Then when you go to Article 21 of the 19 Uganda Agreement, talks about that the agreement will be written in 2 languages, and that is English and Uganda. But the English language was the one to be considered. You get, this gives you in mind, or this portrays in mind that, first and foremost, says that this agreement wasn't interpreted very well. Understand? Wasn't interpreted very well by the regents or by the natives. Something that sparked, understand, something that sparked the 1953 Kabaka crisis. You get, something that led to the reports that are existent, that had the various recommendations, just because they wanted to adjust to cover the illegalities that were covered by the agreement. Something that led for the, actually the language, since most of the natives didn't understand it very well, realized that the only thing that they had in mind, it was, we want to be independent. We are tired of the protectorate. You get, if you can recall what happened at the Marlborough Conference of 1962, it was the event. It was the constitutional event that happened, you understand, before Uganda getting her independence. And I can relate to when you realize Article 6 of the 1995 Constitution talks about that the official language to be considered in the Republic of Uganda, it was supposed to be the English the English language, basically. Reason being that it wasn't just a one-day event, but just because we had adopted the white man's policy and culture and norms, basically. But other than that, these are some of the questions that I've answered is the constitutional developments. Those are some of the constitutional developments that were portrayed by the 19 Uganda Agreement, together with the subsequent constitutional developments up to date, up to the current constitution that we are having. But other than that, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.